Thank you for watching the John Woodard Show. We have the privilege of interviewing Keith Kidwell, member of the House of Delegates in North Carolina. Keith, thank you very much for joining us today. Go ahead and get started. Keith, this thing that you're doing in the House of Representatives with this Freedom Caucus, tell me what the origin is of that and what you attempt to accomplish with it.
Well, so the Freedom Caucus has been around for a while, John. Michael Speciale was the previous chair, I believe, for the last 2 sessions, so 4 years. And I will reform the Freedom Caucus when we open for session, and I will seek the chairman position. Hopefully I'll obtain that. What I'm going to try to do, John, is to look at legislation that comes before the House, look at it from the eye of freedom and liberty, and make sure that we're maintaining those for the people on all legislation that's passed in the state of North Carolina.
The objectives that you're trying to accomplish seem to be universal across every state, that with people that don't have a track record, and they tell you what they think you want, what they think you want to hear, and then they get elected and you find out that they're not that person at all. How can you vet them effectively to know that what their post-election is going to be is what they said they were in the pre-election?
Well, so, really that's where somebody's track record comes into play. When we look at what's up here today, I think the 3rd district particularly, we just had a big swearing in ceremony for the 3rd Congressional District representatives and senators. And to be honest with you, there was a very strong conservative group at that swearing in. I think we swore in 8 representatives or senators, and most of them have a track record. Most of them very conservative. We have a couple of new people coming in the 3rd. We'll see how they do when they get up here and perform. We picked up, I want to say, 4 new seats in the North Carolina House of Representatives. And, that's part of the reason I want to do the Freedom Caucus, John, is I want to invite all conservatives, and I'm hoping that's mostly going to be all of the Republican caucus. And even if they're Democrats, John, I don't care, as long as they're conservative. Now, I don't think there's much of a chance with the current tone in North Carolina that we're going to find any conservative Democrats. But, if we do, they're welcome. Absolutely. I'm all about serving the people within the bounds of the Constitution, and making sure the legislation that we pass meets the muster, if you will, of the Constitution.
There's a huge problem. We hear this at all levels of government, and a lot of a lot of talking, but not very much action. And
hey, John, I'm losing you again. I haven't gotten that last question. You kind of faded it out on me.
Okay, I'll try again. Do you hear me now? I said there's a lot of talk and very little action when it comes to trying to do these to vet these people and hold them accountable for what their promises are after the election. And what particular means do you think you'll be able to accomplish if they don't have a track record?
Well, John, it's not my job to vet a candidate or an elected official. It's the people's job to do that. The only thing I can do is, if somebody's not doing what they ran on, I can speak to that issue when it does arise. But it's up to the people. It's up to the voters, if you will, to go out and make sure that they're sending constitutional people to Raleigh to represent them. The only thing I would be able to do is if somebody were to call me and say, hey, how did this representative do on this job or that job, I could answer those questions. But that's always going to be after the fact. You've got to get the mindset of the people needs to be that they need to elect people and they need to vet a candidate. Unfortunately, when I stand at the polls during the election process, 9 times out of 10, people come up and ask me who they should vote for. Now, I'm glad to tell them who I think they should vote for. But honestly, that's not the way we should be electing people. You know, we should be electing people by the fact that we attend meetings and listen to them. We ask questions about, you know, of those representatives, and then the people should be holding their feet to the fire when they're not performing to the job that they said they were going to do. I oftentimes hear of folks saying, well, you know, he's become an establishment person, or he's done this, he's done that, but then they turn around and reelect him. You know, don't do that. Stop doing that. Stop voting for people that are not representing their districts, their state, whatever it is that they represent. And that goes from the school board to the mayors to the county commissioners, all the way up to Raleigh and up to Washington, D.C. The other thing that kind of upsets me, John, is when people, I've gotten a lot of phone calls and a lot of emails and Facebook messages saying, what are you going to do about Roy Cooper? Meaning me. Okay. Well, guys, I don't have.
You didn't elect him.
Yeah, exactly. You know, I didn't vote for Roy Cooper. Okay. And, you know, if you think that the General Assembly has the authority to walk into the governor's office and run him out of town on a rail, you're sorely mistaken. That's not how a republic works. You know, he has now been, and I'm not going to argue whether or not the votes were fair, this, that, and the other. I'm going to just say that he is now the duly elected governor. Okay. We have to deal with that. If you didn't like that person as governor, you had the opportunity. Now, conservatives, I'm talking to you. Okay. Here's what I'm hearing from people. Representative Kidwell, why didn't you do something? Well, here's what I have to say. Joe and Mary, why didn't you do something? Were you out there working the polls? Were you out? Did you so much as hand out one flyer for Dan Forest for governor? Did you put a bumper sticker on your car? Did you write a check to Dan Forest for $10 even? Did you go out and work at the polling places to supervise the elections? Because any American can do that. Contact the party. They can put you in as a poll observer. That's how you stop the cheating. That's how you get people elected. You don't turn to the representatives after the fact when you allowed this to happen and say, hey, what are you going to do now? You know what I'm going to do now? I'm going to run legislation that I find to be constitutional legislation, and the governor's going to veto it. I can tell you that, because that's the governor that the people allowed to be elected in this state. If you didn't like him, you should have got out and worked harder for Dan Forest. And if all you did was vote, you didn't really do anything, okay? Because voting is the part of the process that gives you one voice. If you go out and talk to somebody for 5 minutes, you have a 30% chance of changing their mind on who they're voting for. So if we each went out and spoke to 10 or 15 or 20 people for just 5 minutes, but you know what I hear, John? I don't like to talk politics. You don't like to talk the thing that runs your life. You don't like to talk to the thing that causes people to raise your taxes, to infringe on your rights of freedom of religion, and infringe on your rights of the right to keep and bear arms. I could go on and on about that. Don't tell me you don't want to talk about politics.
All
Okay?
those things are in the public square right now at the federal level. And if you don't think that they're going to come down here to North Carolina and try to do those things and have the support of the local people, you're crazy.
I understand, John, and let me tell you something. They will be fighting me as a representative. I will do everything that's within my power to make sure that we do not have that type of government overreach in the state of North Carolina. And I'm not saying it's not going to happen, because I think you're right. I think we're going to see a attempt at gun grab. I think we're going to see an attempt at, and they probably will be successful in raising our taxes through the roof. But you know, we, the American people, and I hear a lot of people since Biden is now going to become the president, it looks like on January 20th, I got a lot of people saying, well, he's not my president, I'm not going to listen, and I'm not voting anymore. Yeah, that's the way to do it. Yeah, just quit and go home.
That'll really get a change, won't it?
Oh, yeah, that'll fix things in the next. Just quit and go home, sit down, relax on the sofa, and let the Democrats run the country. Good plan. That's going to work well. You know, I'm glad we didn't have those type of people in 1776. I'm glad we didn't have those people in 1812. I'm glad we didn't have those people in 1918. I'm glad we didn't have those people in 1942, because we would all be speaking, well, if it was 1776, we'd be speaking the King's English, and all of the other situations, we'd be speaking somebody else's language. Quitting is the wrong thing. Redoubling your efforts, getting out, like I said earlier, work for the candidate of your choice, or you know what, even better idea, you don't like who's running, you're free to go down and put your name on a ballot. You can absolutely do that. You go down, you pay the filing fee. I think for my filing fee, it was $150. If you don't like the person representing you, here's what you do. Look in the mirror. If you like that person, go register.
You bring things down to a very manageable level for everybody, and it's clear, easily understood. What about this pact that you're wanting to organize?
So I think when we get the Freedom Caucus up and running, I'm going to look at doing a Freedom Pact. I've looked into the details of that, and it's mind-boggling. I've actually got to sit down with an attorney in the next couple of weeks and see, because I don't want to run awry of any of the laws. I want to make sure everything we do is on the up and up and within the bounds of the Constitution and the general statutes. We have to look at the federal laws and see what our reporting requirements are. It's a lot of effort, John. But ultimately, the goal is to be able to raise funds to support constitutional conservatives who are Christian valued people and put them in office so that we can turn around the way things are happening both in North Carolina and in the United States in general, to make sure that we're getting back to the people, we're getting back to what our founders thought we should be and what I believe we should be.
What are the major areas of legislation that you as an individual think that you want to try to pursue in the next session?
John, I get 15 bill chips is what we call them. And I'm going to need to go find some more. I'm going to have to talk to some of my friends because I'm looking at legislation that's going to be probably 2 or 3 pieces to rein in the governor's overreach that we've seen happen since COVID. The ability, or his thought that he had the ability to shut our churches down, which fortunately I was able to put together a lawsuit and sue him and get our churches back open under another lawsuit. We got our gyms open. We threatened another lawsuit and ended up getting the hair salons open. So we need to make sure, and it's not necessarily, I'm not denying that COVID's out there, John. What I'm saying is, first of all, the cure has become worse than the disease. There are hundreds of thousands of people out of work across North Carolina because of the overreach and overreaction that we have done during COVID. Let's look at this real simple. They're out there telling us everybody has to wear a mask, and if we would all just do that for 2 weeks, COVID would go away. Well, that hasn't worked all the way back since March, because the first 2 weeks, pretty much everybody stayed home. We still have COVID. Then it was 2 months, then it was 6 months, and now we're coming up on 8, 9, 10 months. And here's the bottom line. If you go outside and look, virtually everybody for the last 6 weeks has been wearing a mask, and COVID continues to excel. What does that tell us? The masks don't work.
Well, even Dr. Fauci has said so. So why is it that the governors are smarter than the man that they say is God on this issue?
Well, because they're listening to advisors like Mandy Cohen, who I don't think necessarily has a full grasp on this. And I'll be honest with you, John, they called this a novel virus when it came out. It's new. So yeah, it's new. We don't understand it. I think we understand the human condition. And the human condition throughout history has proven that these diseases are going to run their course. And we have to adapt and live with them, not try to shelter in place, shut everything down, destroy the economy. And let's talk about the deaths that have resulted due to the restrictions of COVID. Okay? Everybody's talking about how many people have died from COVID. You know what they're not talking about, John? How many people died of a heart attack, a stroke, kidney disease, cancer, because they can't or won't go out of their home to get help. Okay? That death rate far exceeds the COVID death rate. Suicide for people under 24 years old in this country exceeds the death rate from COVID. And that's not just the normal, we're not talking about our average over the last 20 years of suicide. We're talking about a marked increase in suicide due to the COVID restrictions. Okay? Does anybody talk about that? Does anybody care? It doesn't appear to me they do. I mentioned this on the floor of the House back in, I want to say it was probably June, the same issue, because all these numbers started coming into view that we could see this. The Department of Labor, I believe it was, and it's a long time ago, so don't quote me on that, but there was a government study that has held true since 1942, that for every single point of increase in nationwide unemployment, we see an additional 58,000 deaths in the United States. If you take the rate of increase of unemployment alone and factor that into the number of deaths resulting from that, that exceeds the number of COVID deaths. So we're seeing all these residuals and side effects of what we're doing to try and stop COVID, which is not working. Okay. Again, it's a disease that's going to run its course. Thank God President Trump went out and pushed to get the vaccines that we needed, so that those vaccines are now available to people. That's going to help. You know, herd immunity is going to help, and the vaccine is actually part of that equation. But you know, we've got to stop the government overreach into this problem and make sure that not just with COVID, in any other similar situation, this doesn't happen again. And again, I don't care if it was a Republican or Democrat that was serving. The point would be, first and foremost, the government never has the authority to tell me to close the church. They can ask, they can say, churches, here's what we think you should do, but they never had the authority to interfere with religion. And the courts have now made that very clear to Governor Cooper. All right. When we look at business, you know, we're shutting down businesses, destroying businesses and destroying lives over a concern for a medical condition that what we've done has not had an impact. You know, Governor Cooper, look at this. New York has even figured this out now. Just yesterday, I read an article where New York said, you know what, we can't continue to stay shut down. In spite of COVID, we're going to have to reopen the state and put people back to work and get the kids back to school. Now, let's go to Craven County, John. Craven County suffered a massive hurricane that shut some of the schools down for 2 and 3 months a couple of years ago. Then we had COVID. You have students in Craven County who have missed out on over a year of school. How do we fix that? How do we recover from that? How do we take these children who have lost huge chunks of their lives and bring that back to them and give it back to them? We can't. It's real simple. That's not going to happen. And we should have never, you know, the hurricane's not our fault, okay? But we have to look at that and say, hey, you know, we've got to get these kids back in school. Let's look at the private sector of schools. The private schools have been open. I've talked to the teachers. I've talked to the principals. I've talked to the students. Here's what I know. The private schools are not having a problem dealing with COVID. We're not having big issues there. But all the public schools are shut down. All the private schools are open, up and running. You know, something's not right. The math just isn't working here when you look at it from that perspective. The other things I'm looking at is, again, and this is constitutional type stuff, you know, kind of aside from COVID, because that's a big one I'm going after. I want to look at our election laws in North Carolina. We actually came through this okay. We did pretty well. Am I going to say there was no fraud in North Carolina? No, because I know better than that. Okay. I also know that there were people that failed to perform their job as either volunteers or paid officials within the election process. We need to have some teeth in our election positions that says, you know, if you have displayed gross negligence in your job, you can't work in North Carolina in the election process again. We don't have that ability. So if we have let's take 2 poll workers, I understand, overslept in one particular county, and the polls didn't get open for 40 minutes late, okay? Those 2 people are too irresponsible to ever be allowed to work any place within the election process in the state of North Carolina again. So they need to be put on the list that says, sorry, you don't have the capacity to do the job that we need done. We'll get somebody else to do it. We need to have a situation on our ballots. When we send them out, we've got to be able to track those ballots. We've got to be able to verify when we have absentee ballots that they're actually completed by the people that they should be, and that they're appropriately returned to the boards of elections so that they can be appropriately recorded. We need to make sure that the numbers that are sent from the county are what are actually reflected at the state level. So we need to have an audit by each board of elections. Wouldn't take 10 minutes that they go in a day or 2 after the election process and look at the state's website and then keep a tab on that to make sure the numbers we certify are actually the numbers that were sent up by the precincts and then by the board of elections in each particular county, so that we know that we have an absolutely foolproof system. Because what we saw in Washington, D.C., that was wrong. We should never have a situation where we're going in and rioting and tearing down buildings and killing people, okay, because our vote wasn't heard. That shouldn't happen in the United States of America. Why it happened is the people got mad. The people, you know, they have a right to get mad, because if their voting process is not being honored, we need to deal with that. And many of these court situations, and you know, I don't know if there was actually valid data or not. Here's what I believe happened. These cases were not investigated to prove, hey, you know what, we really didn't have fraud here. And that's what we should be able to do. We should be able to certify an election and make sure that that election is 100% accurate. We need to get the voter ID, the photo ID. That's been passed through the courts again. I expect there'll be a challenge on it. Okay. I expect there's going to be more lawsuits on this, but we need to have photo ID when people come in to vote. You know, John, I go to the bank. I try to put $20 in my personal bank account at the drive-up window, and the girl says, I need to see an ID. Put money in my bank.
Yeah.
Now, personally, John, I looked at her. I said, you know, I don't remember her name, but let's say it was Mary. I said, Mary, anybody that pulls up to this window that wants to put money in my account, please let them. Okay, I don't care who they are. Doesn't matter to me. Somebody wants to put money in my bank account, Keith Kidwell's bank. I'll send them the number if they want. Okay, go ahead and let them do it. All right, it's all good. But in seriousness, I can't take out a library book. I can't go put money in my bank. I can't do hardly anything. If I use a credit card, they can ask me for an ID. If I use a debit card, they can ask me for an ID. If I go to register for school, if you come to my office where I prepare tax returns, you have to show a photo ID to prepare your federal and state tax return. But you don't have to have one to protect the most sacred right we have in the United States. And you know what's interesting? I do have to have a photo ID and then some in North Carolina if I want to carry a firearm. So they can infringe on that right, but they won't let me establish a photo ID for voting. Makes no sense, okay? The only reason I can figure you don't want to protect the elections, and I'm talking about protecting them from people who are incapable of doing the job, from people who have nefarious intent, or from people who come in and try and vote and it's not actually them. If you do not want to exclude those situations, there's only one reason you would do that, John. That's because you have the intent of cheating, okay? Because I'm not trying to make it hard for people. Are you going to sit there and tell me that it's 2 years to the next election, guys? We have 2 years, okay? You have 2 years to get a free photo ID. In Beaufort County, you can take free public transportation to do that. You got 2 years to do it, okay? Start now. Now, are there people out there that are telling me that some of these folks are too stupid to figure that out? That's insulting.
Yeah, sure as hell is. It's
right?
racist on top of that.
Well, I'm not even going to get into races. I don't like playing that card. But it is absolutely insulting. If you told me that me or somebody in my family was too stupid to figure that out, I'd be pretty upset with you. Okay.
What do you think about the impact on the state budget from all the loss of tax revenues from the shutdown? Any anticipation of what that's going to amount to?
Well, the bigger problem is not really going to be the state revenue, but the state is actually, from what we see at this point, in fairly stable condition. Dale Falwell, our treasurer, who is just a phenomenal man, we are blessed to have him as the treasurer. Yeah, he has indicated that we're in good condition at this point. He's looking at our borrowing capacity to see how that does, and we're going to work on that. At this time, and I could be wrong, but at this time, it doesn't look like that's a big problem. Our biggest problem, John, is business. Okay, we have got to get the businesses back up and running. We have got to get the restaurants open. We've got to get all of the gyms open. We've got to get the mom and pop shops, the artisans, the tourist industry. We have got to get everybody back to work in North Carolina, because that's where the biggest part of the problem is going to be. John, these businesses are failing. These businesses that employ 2, 3, 5, 10 people. They are the backbone of our society. If we don't get them back to work, we're never going to recover from this in a financial method. And where the state right now is in decent condition, that's not going to continue. It can't. The math just simply won't work, because if people aren't working, they're not spending money, they're not making money, they're not paying income tax, sales tax, they're not buying the licenses for their business, they're not doing anything. And that's going to choke out the revenue at some point in the near future if we don't get them back up and going. So that's got to be paramount. We've got to find ways to help these people get back on their feet and to get back in business and to get North Carolina back to work.
What do you think about the education system? I know we've got a new superintendent of education, but there's been a problem with indoctrination of our children all the way from grade school to higher education. Do you have any suggestions on what we can do or what the superintendent can do to curb that problem?
Well, I'll tell you, one of the things I noted, John, in my first session, we'll call it, my first term, I visited every school in the 79th district, literally walked the halls, talked to the teachers, talked to the students, talked to the janitors, talked to the librarians, to the coaches, bus drivers, you name it. I went around to every school and saw everybody. I went to both of my boards of education at the county level in Craven and Beaufort counties, and I asked the following question. What is the biggest obstacle that you have in successfully educating our children? Now, you would have expected you were going to hear money. Okay? One teacher told me money. One. Every other person, every other principal, every other teacher, and even some of the staff in the school told me the same thing. It is the home life of the children where the parents do not push the kids to learn. Okay? Now, this isn't all the parents. It doesn't take but one in a classroom. It doesn't take but one rogue student. It doesn't take one troublemaker to cause the entire class to be disrupted. Now, this is what the teachers told me. This is not my words. This is their words. Okay? So when we look at education, the first thing we've got to do, John, is get the information into the kids' brains. And that's where we're failing today. It's not the curriculum is not the biggest part. It is a problem, but it's not the biggest part of the problem. Okay? We have a bleed off that these children suffer. We see them when they come into either pre-K or kindergarten, first grade, first through third.
Ken,
get in playing computer games? I don't know. But here's what I do know. The parents can have the biggest impact on that. The parents are the ones that need to be involved in education. So if we're not going to have them involved, we're not going to be successful in teaching their children. Now, as far as the indoctrination that we see, now, I've had people tell me, well, my child went off to college as a Christian conservative and came back as a bleeding heart liberal. That totally changed my mindset. They don't care about America, raise taxes. You know, they embrace socialism. You know, that we're going to have to fault to what's happening in the colleges. I don't know that it's actually the teachers. I don't know if it's some of the other staff. I don't know if it's the fact that just young kids kind of think that way sometimes. But if we teach the tenets of America, if we teach civics, if we teach them what the Constitution is, if we teach them how government works, I think they would have a better understanding and therefore be able to make better decisions and come out as what I'll call and I don't want to make everybody conservative. That's not my goal. My goal is that they can think for themselves and not just espouse what they've been told by other people. One of the things that I think back on my childhood, when I got ready to register to vote, my mother told me, she said, I just want you to know when it came time for me, talking about her, to register to vote, she asked her father, Dad, should I register as Republican or Democrat? And he said to her, he said, Louise, I want you to go down to the library and read books on what both parties believe, and then register what you believe is what you think. Okay. Nobody does that today, John.
no,
You know,
hell no.
No, they're of a particular party persuasion because their parents were, or they're of a particular party persuasion because they like or dislike a particular candidate, just one. You know, you've got to look at the party platform. Okay. Does the party believe in what you believe? Now, if that party doesn't believe in what you believe, you probably don't belong in that party. Okay. I'm going to take abortion as a topic. I talk to somebody who tells me, well, I'm a Democrat and I'm Christian. How do you reconcile that for me? Because I find it very hard to belong to any organization that would be so diametrically opposed to Christianity when it comes to the fact of abortion. Okay. To me, the Bible tells me I knew you in your mother's womb and I formed you there. But the party platform for the Democrats is they support abortion. Okay. In fact, we had 4 pastors, I believe it was, who voted against the Born Alive Abortion Survivor Act right here in North Carolina a year and a half ago. Okay. Voted against the veto override that the governor put on it so that we could not outlaw the case of where a child who survives an abortion, not in a hospital, because the hospitals don't do them, okay, but in a clinic, an abortion clinic, the child survives that abortion, that bill would have said you must administer the proper health care to that child as you would any other citizen. But no, the Democrats voted against that. That's a party of death. Okay? That's not, now, if you're a Christian, how can you support that? If you're walking down the street and walk past this building and somebody says, hey, come join my club. And you start, okay, well, let me see about this club. So I'm going to vet that club, right? I'm going to say, what do you believe in? Well, we believe in God. We believe you should accept Jesus Christ as your personal savior, and that you should tithe and do all of this. And we believe in abortion. You going to join that club? I'm not. Okay, I'm going to walk
people
away.
that support abortion ought to be thankful their parents didn't think that way.
Well, as Ronald Reagan said, he noted that the only people who are in favor of abortion are those who have already been born.
Yes.
So,
well, buddy, I tell you, I could go on forever, but I know you're a busy man. You've been very, very helpful and very informative. I look forward to talking with you again. You've given my viewers a hell of a lot of good, useful information. I look forward to speaking with you again in the near future.
John, thank you very much. And in closing, if you're not happy with the way the government's running right now, find a candidate you like, get out and work your tail off for that candidate, put the hours in. I'm not talking about 10 minutes here and there. I'm talking about get out, work, make phone calls, deliver literature, work the polls, get them elected, raise money, have a coffee at your house, and get them in office. And if you really don't like anybody that's running, walk down to your board of elections, put in that filing fee, and run yourself, because we need people at the county commissions, we need them at the city councils, we need them at the boards of elections, House of Representatives, and every other level. And there's nothing that stops anybody in this country from running for office and going out and making the changes. If you don't think one person can make a difference, I will now beg to argue with you on that point, because I can assure you this. Governor Cooper knows that Representative Kidwell has made a difference in the track of this state, and I will continue to do so. I will work for the liberty of the people, because as I've told them on the floor of the House time and again, my number one job as your representative is to protect and defend your liberty. And I tell you now, I will do that to my dying breath.